Hello, welcome back to Math Time with Professor Prime, and I'm your host as always, Professor Prime. So, today we're going to talk about math in Clair Obscur Expedition 33, and I am excited. Clair Expedition 33 is an excellent game, like wonderful across the board. Like it has a story that is as tragic as it is beautiful. It has excellent characters with like absolutely superb like voice work, which contributes to said characters along with the writing. It has like really awesome like gameplay that keeps you engaged, keeps you on your toes, and we'll get to that. And then there's the music. When I heard some tracks early on, um, it seemed like it was going to be just this like operatic, orchestral track, right? Where it's just like you get score after score where it would be beautiful, right? It would be excellent, but that would be kind of the vibe, right? And that's true to an extent, but that does not do the game service because it is like pretty experimental in some of those tracks, right? Like that, like okay, so the music it is as daring as it is deliberate, and I appreciate that. And we'll get into that a little bit more later, but I wanted to bring that up. So like in so many avenues, the ones I mentioned and some that I haven't, um, it just excels across the board. Like it is a rare game where it's like, hey, look, this is a new IP, and it just came out the gate swinging. And so I want to talk about it today, and I want to talk about the math along the way because, like, um, first and foremost, when it comes to math, right, like it's everywhere and it's in everything. And when it comes to gaming, it's such a beautiful example of that. It's one of those examples of math where it's like, hey, look, even if someone didn't see it right off the bat, like you can like talk to them and they would get it. Like that's been my experience typically. Like gaming is great with that, music is great with that, food, sports, like things along those lines, like that people tend to connect with. And then there's like a personal element for me. Gaming is a huge part of my life. I have been gaming for over 30 years at this point. If you're wondering, I'm older than I look. I am pushing 40 at this point. And so I've been gaming since I was 6. So it's been a long journey. And so for me, math and gaming is such a beautiful combo. And gaming is such like an excellent illustration of both math and art coming together in a way to show like look these two things cannot be divorced, but also like math is just like everywhere. And so I like those elements, and I enjoy talking about math, and I enjoy like talking about gaming, and I enjoy talking about them like together. And so when I don't know what I was doing with my hand there, but but yeah, so I enjoy talking about those two things together, especially with games that I enjoy. And with Clair Obscur, you can see the math, you can see the art, and like you can see that fusion. And so here's how the video is gonna go. Now that I've given my intro of sorts, um, I am going to talk about how math is used throughout Clair Obscur Expedition like 33. And for the record, I throughout the video might address the game by its full title, but I also might say like Clair Obscur or just like Expedition 33, or use some combination of those things. At any rate, I'll talk about math throughout the game, and my focus will be on combat and kind of using that to expand. And there's a few reasons for that. Like for me, like I like having great gameplay as well as great story, but like the gameplay does have to be there for me. And so that's a big thing. And like a lot of the games that I play do feature combat, and that can be such a pivotal point towards the game, right? Because you got to figure with combat, it's a basic idea, right? Like dishing out damage while trying to avoid taking it, and you're expanding that, and you're taking this idea that's inherently mathematical, right? Because you're either trying to stay at 100%, or at least trying to avoid going down to 0% as far as your health is concerned. Meanwhile, you're trying to take your opponents down to 0%, right? So you have this idea that's inherently mathematical, very basic idea that can be very nuanced. And so not only do you talk about math in and of itself as far as that idea of combat goes, right? Like just on that base level. But you have all these systems at play, and so you get to talk about like that. And with those systems and getting to talk about that, it illustrates the math in a really cool way. But that's not all. Because not only are you going to be dealing with this gameplay throughout the course of a game, you are also going to be using it in tandem with everything else, right? Like, or it is tied together with everything else, and that's by design, right? Because, like, hey, you get a good sense of the combat. You have that system that you're playing in any given game, and as you progress with that combat, as you get better, as you like look at the ins and outs of that, you're also progressing not only in the combat but progressing in the exploration, right? Like progressing in the narrative, and these three major things are all working together. So it's like you don't have good combat, then it's gonna suck to explore, or it's gonna suck to get through that story. But if you have good combat, and then like um, you're taking note of that link to other elements of a game, and you're making sure that they're all nice and linked up. Not only is that math to get all that working, but it's like it's such a beautiful thing to do. And with Clair Obscur, it is so intentional with so many of the things that it does. And so I want to focus in on the combat and then like go from there. And I just like I feel like there's so much that I want to say in this video, and we're going to like just roll with it. And spoilers ahead, like mad spoilers. I would probably try to hold off on like those narrative-based spoilers, you know, until I'm a little further in the video. But some things that like pop up as far as like mechanics and stuff like that, I'll be saying along the way. But I also don't want to hold back, so I may say different things at different points throughout this. But just know that there's spoilers ahead if you want to go into Clair Obscur with like no idea. So yeah, spoilers ahead. Let's get into it. Like, and I feel like I had an intro after my intro, but I don't regret it because some of the things that I said about Clair Obscur in the beginning is like stuff that I would normally say at the end, but it's such an excellent game that I wanted to like touch on these things now. And before we get too far in, it's also worth noting that 33 days after Clair Obscur Expedition 33 came out, it reached 3.3 million copies sold. So that's crazy. And like the developers had to say something about that. And like Sandfall, like Interactive, if you were wondering. Um, okay, so let's talk about combat. So a little earlier in this, I said that with combat on that base level, you have the idea that you're dishing out damage while trying to avoid taking it, right? Like, and it's something that's inherently mathematical. Um, right? Because you're trying to maintain your health. You're trying to stay at 100%, while trying to avoid going down to zero, and you're trying to get your opponent's health to go down to zero and win the battle and progress and explore the world, explore the story and all that. And they all work together, right? And so it's like, okay, so you have this basic idea, it's something that's inherently mathematical, but with these games, it's like, right, you go deeper than that. It's like, well, how do you take the steps to like, learn the dance that you'll be performing throughout the game? And with Clair Obscur, like it is nuanced, and I like that. So let's um, go back to that base level and then build up from there. So each battle, right? You're dealing with like turn-based like combat with an interactive element, and so you have your turns, but like you'll have to do like different prompts, like quick time events, QTEs. So you have that interactive element, and sometimes this is like, hey, it allows you to perform like extra damage or an extra attack in a chain. But in some cases, it's like, hey, this allows me to like defend and do stuff like that, right? So you have that idea that you have a turn-based system that's interactive, and if we're starting to expand from that idea of just like dishing out damage and taking, it's like, well, how are you dishing out damage throughout the game? So there's several elements to it. Like when you're on that battle screen, there are several things that you can do during your turn. You can attack, you can have a base attack, and it's just a singular attack at first. You can change that later on, but we'll get to it. um, so you have that idea that you have your base attack, right? And when you perform your base attack, you're building like AP. and AP is used throughout the game to sorry, use your skills. Um, that's the big part. Um, so and you can gain up to like nine, and then you have to like use them, or else it just won't build, right? So a base attack will gain you some AP, and the same for like parrying, for instance, which is a thing that you could do as well. But if we stick to that base attack, you could do that, but you can use your skills. And the skills are, there's special sorts of attacks or actions that you can take throughout battle that you have learned over time. And some of them, well, a good amount of them are absolutely damage oriented, right? But some of them can allow you to recover your health or recover your allies' health, or revive them, right? And so you have these basic ideas and then you have so you have your base attack, you have your skills, but you also have the idea of like free aim. So with free aim you can like use that before like your actual attack, but in addition to your skills using AP, your free aim, sorry, your free aim uses AP as well. So you have that, right? And you can decide what you want to do because like maybe you have some like opponent that it's hard to hit them, and it might be better to use free aim. So it just might mean maybe you don't get to use your skill that time, that next turn. But that's fine if you're dishing out damage and your goal was to get rid of that right pesky enemy. Um, and we'll dive into that a little bit more too as we progress. But so like just to start, you have that idea that you could do your base attack, you could do skill, and with those skills that you can use, like I said, they have a variety of effects. But you could also do free aim. You could be strategic about that. You can also use items, right? You can use like the tints, and you could use health tint, energy tint, or revive tint, right? So with the health tint, it revives your health. Energy tint, it gives you more AP. Then revive tint, it brings like your characters back from the dead. So you have these basic elements of the game as far as like the basic actions, but it's a little different than some RPGs that like you might be used to because you also have the idea that you can dodge or you can parry, right? And dodging is easier to do than parrying. And the idea here is like even though it's turn-based, there's that interactive element that I mentioned, and you can be paying attention to, or sorry, you will have to pay attention to your opponents so that you can dodge or parry. And with dodge, like I said, it's easier to do than the parry. Like you won't take damage if you time things correctly, right? Um, you can dodge or you can do perfect dodge. And either way, you're not necessarily like taking damage there. And depending on your character and their skills or their pictos, which we'll get to, and Lumina's, depending on all those things, they might be able to get like some AP from doing a perfect dodge, but that's a added layer. Um, so with parry, um, it's like it's harder to do than a dodge, and it takes the same timing. That perfect timing is the perfect dodge. Only here, like again, like it's still like despite that same timing, harder to pull off. And you have to be good with the timing and like hit or sorry, parry that attack, and you can perform a counter though. That's the caveat, and you also get some AP from that. So it's like, hey, you can dodge, and it's safer to dodge, but you can perform a parry, and it's like if you fail, you will get damage, but if you succeed, you can perform a counter attack if the timing is like right for that, and then get AP. Or let me explain that a little differently. So with the parry, like you can parry. Sorry. When you parry, you get like one AP back in general from that. But if you have an opponent and they are launching a chain of attacks, if you manage to parry all of those chains, then you can perform a counter attack. Now, if it's just one hit on their end, then you can counter immediately. So there is something to be said for parrying and then like potentially not parrying everything. Um, So there's the idea. There's some strategy from it. So like, and this all I've mentioned is like the base level things that you can do, like pretty much from jump. Is you go on, you do develop like new abilities that you can battle. And speaking of jump, that is something that you can do. So throughout the game, it's like, in general, you can decide whether you want to like dodge or parry. There are some enemies who will do attacks from the air, right? They'll jump, and you can see an icon when that happens, and you can then jump and dish out damage if you time that correctly. And so you have that. And then later on, you come across enemies that can do gradient attacks. And, you know, this is indicated by like the area, like all turning like gray. Like, you all can still see each other and that's color, but like you can see the gray. Um, and if you time that correctly, you can do some huge damage. If you fail, you can take some huge damage, right? Early on, it's not uncommon for you to possibly die from that. But later on, it's just like, depending on your opponents, it's just a matter of taking some damage. And then later on, still, you learn how to do gradient, you know, attacks yourself. And you can learn them as the game progresses. And you can also increase friendship levels of people that you're playing as throughout the game and learn new gradient attacks. And if we could, because like I realized that I'm like going through it, like if we can pull that back a little bit, you have that basic idea to start, right? That you can attack, right, and dish out that damage, and you're trying to avoid damage. And so when you're trying to avoid damage, or sorry, trying to dish out damage, and trying to avoid taking it, it's like you have that basic idea, and then it expands, right? Because not only can you do that, sorry, not only can you attack, but you can do different things to defend yourself or avoid taking damage or recovering from it. And so it starts to expand, right? So it's like, hey, I'm trying to dish out damage while trying to not take it. And then, hey, there are different ways that I can dish out that damage. And there are different ways for me to either avoid the damage, altogether, negate it, or recover from it, right? And so you have these ideas that just on that base level that's starting to expand, and then it's like, oh, well, what can I do to dish out that damage, right? Hey, I have my base attacks. I have different skills. I have, you know, the gradient attacks later on that you can build by using your skills, among other things. And then you have free aim, which you could use strategically. And so you had a very basic concept, and that started to expand, right? But it's not over, right? Because it's not just the things I mentioned, it's the larger parts of that, right? So as you're going throughout the game, one, you have your combat stats and attributes that impact those combat stats. But you're gaining experience through your battles, right? And you're leveling up and you're increasing those combat stats and attributes. And let's talk about those two things. So each character has their combat stats, and those combat stats grow in time, just in general, right? But then you have attributes that impact those stats even further in weapons that you have and pictos, and we'll get to those in a little bit. So you have the combat stats, and there's like five that are just like kind of like on the surface there. You have health, you have attack power, you have defense, you have speed, and you have critical rate. With health, it's like, hey, it increases your overall health pool, right? And with your health, it's like, hey, you can take this much damage. Like you take you can take this much damage before zeroing out. And then if you zero out, you have to either be revived for that given character, or if your whole party zeroes out, then you get the reserve team in. And if they zero out and you can't revive anyone at any point, it's usually game over, or in some cases, just battle over if you're in a situation where that was the case. So you have that idea, right? And then you have attack, and it's like, hey, this impacts the damage that I'm dishing out here. Then you have like defense, um, and that reduces the incoming damage. You have the speed. It's a turn-based game, and that impacts like appropriately how fast you're moving, like how many turns you can play, like or sorry, how often you can play. Either way, right? Like it's impacting that. So speed still works here because like, hey, if I have higher speed, then I can move faster. And in terms of combat, it's like I can have like more opportunities to play, right? Um, so there's that, and then there's the idea of critical rate. So critical rate, that's that it increases the chances of you dishing out critical hits. So what are critical hits in the context of Clair Obscur? Well, in this case, critical hits deal 50% more damage than a regular attack would. And that's always nice and simple. So, like, you have those combat stats, like I said, health, attack power, defense, speed, and critical rate. Um, and then, like, those are impacted by several factors, like I mentioned, but we're going to start with attributes. So, when it comes to attributes, you have vitality, which impacts your health. Wouldn't that make sense? You have might, which impacts your attack power, and that also makes sense. Then you have the defense stat, right? Um, and that might go a little differently than you may be thinking, because it's like the defense, the defense attribute impacts the defense stat, but it also impacts the attack power if I'm recalling that correctly. And so that's not all, right? Like, because the other two have similar sort of things, right? The other two attributes that I mentioned. But I would like to point out, just from a personal standpoint, for me, like, if you were going to have a stat, sorry, or an attribute that affects other stats, I would have thought that, might would have, like, helped with attack power and defense. But it's defense that helps with, like, attack power and defense. Okay, and then you have the idea of agility. And agility, that impacts your speed, but also your defense. And it's like fair enough. And then you have luck, and that impacts your critical rate, which that part makes sense to me. But also, I think both your attack power and your defense. I might be mixing that up, but I think that's it though. And so it's like kind of wild. It's either defense or agility. But my point is, you have like two attributes that impact, stats that you'd expect, and then another three where they're impacting multiple stats. And so that's not all. Is you're gaining experience points, you're leveling up, and you're increasing those stats in general, like I was saying. But you're also giving attribute points, and you can use those attribute you can use those attribute points to impact the stats directly. So yeah, you have that idea, right? Like for the combat stats, health, attack power, defense, speed, and critical rate. And for the attributes that impact those combat stats, you have vitality, might. You have the defense attribute, and I mentioned it just because there's a defense combat stat too, but also like agility and luck. So yeah, you have all these things to consider along with everything I just mentioned. And so you go back to that general idea of like dishing out damage and trying to avoid taking it, and it starts to expand. But that's not all. Like right throughout the game, you have different weapons that you can equip. And with those weapons, they all have like different levels, right? And as you gain those levels, like they increase in what they can do in terms of like the damage that they're dishing out, which but also like the stats that they boost, and they kind of scale with you as they go, and those weapons can level up, and you can spend different items that you find throughout the game or buy to do that, and we'll get into that because that's a whole nother thing, right? um, but yeah, so you have several things that are impacting your stats and your attributes as you're going on, right? And not only the things I mentioned, but the idea of pictos. and that leads to luminous. And so we're going to talk about all these things, and then I'm actually going to pause this video because it's getting long. I am going to continue like with it and just go all out. Um, but it actually shouldn't make a big deal, or it shouldn't be a big deal to you because you might not see it. But I wanted to mention it because that's just my thing. So let's talk about the pictos and the luminas, and then I'll do my quick pause and start back up. And to you, it should be quick, even though I had my speech, which interrupts that, and I realize that as I am talking. But again, it's just kind of my thing with it. So, with the pictos, the idea, they're items that you can find throughout the game that have their different stats, right? Or different stats that are associated with them. So you might acquire a picto, and it increases your health and your defense, or like in some cases, it might increase your speed or critical rate, or any combination of those things, right? And with those pictos, they have effects called luminous. And with those luminas, they can do a wide range of things. Like you might have luminas that allow you to start the turn with one additional AP, or start the battle with one additional AP. You have luminas that can literally bring you back to life, like once a turn. Like you can revive with 100% AP, and you don't have to like spend a revive tint. You have one in particular that allows you to attack 2 times in a row. You have, and just to be clear, it's just it kind of ups the chain in terms of the battle order, right? So it's like you can attack, and then bam, you can immediately attack again. And what's crazy about that is there are also like the combo attack, like luminas that you have, or you have those pictos and those luminas and that effect, and it's like, right, like you can attack multiple times. So it's like, hey, if I have one of those combo attack luminas equipped, I can like maybe go out and I hit you 2 times with my base attack. But then if I have like the cheater picto slash lumina equipped, then all of a sudden I can do that again, or I can do a skill and stuff like that, and I can build AP. You can play that game. But my point is, like, you can do a wide variety of effects. It's like, hey, maybe I can dish out different status effects, or maybe I can recover my health with different pictos. And so you have that, and you can expand. And that's what I'll be doing in this next section. I should have paused before doing that, but in any case, if you're still with me, awesome. Because like I have much more to say, and it's just like I'm excited. Because let's pause for. Okay, so we're back, just like that. Okay, so let's do a recap before expanding. And again, like we're just talking about the combat here, so it's wild, right? Because again, if we go back to the beginning, you have that idea of combat, right? That idea of battling your opponents, and is you are dealing with said combat and you're winning battles, right? You're gaining experience points, you're leveling up, you're increasing your stats, right? You're increasing your attributes, you're getting different weapons, you're leveling them up, you're gaining different pictos, you're mastering those pictos. And think about that is like, yeah, after a certain number of battles, like you can master like the pictos that you have equipped, and you can maintain their luminas. I'm sorry, that lumina effect, and this is in the form of lumina points. So lumina points allow you to assign, um, those desired effects, and you can increase those lumina points. But back to kind of like where I was going with it is like, okay, so you have your combat, you're fighting these battles, you're gaining stats. Sorry, you're increasing your stats, you're increasing your attribute, which impact your stats. Um, you're gaining different pictos, different luminas as a result. You're accruing like different resources throughout the game, and you have that overall combat system, which just brings it all together. So you have that combat, right? And you're dishing out damage, and you're trying to not take it. And so you're doing a dance as you go on, and you have to learn how to perform that dance through that combat. And so you have your base attack, but you have free aim. You have your skills. You have gradient attacks. You can parry. You can dodge. You can jump. So you can do all these things in combat. But that's not all. There's the actual enemies themselves. And remember, it's an interactive turn-based game, so you have to be paying attention to what your opponents do. And I can say this, like, they are moving in different ways. You are consistently on your toes throughout that entire game, because you might have a type of enemy that's doing a specific attack, right? But then a completely different type is going to be doing a different attack. So it's like you might have an enemy where maybe they have like 4 hits and they're going bam, 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 and that's like the timing, right? But you might have another enemy that maybe they're hitting you with 3 hits, and maybe it's not as fluid. Maybe it's like bam, bam, and then there's a pause, and then bam, right? And then you have enemies that, like, they're switching up their attack pattern. So you might have an enemy that in one turn they might be going bam, 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 but then in another turn they might be going bam, bam, bam. And there's that to consider. So it's like you're doing your dance and you have all these things going on, in terms of like what you can do, right? And what's contributing to what you can do, but you also have to be watching your opponents, and they strike differently, right? Different enemies hit different amounts. Sorry, they hit different amount of times with their attacks, because it could be one, it could be twice, it could be 3 times, it could be more in some cases, but they're all like hitting a certain amount of times, and those hits have a certain rhythm to them, right? A certain way that they're attacked, okay? And you're paying attention to their animation and their sounds to help guide you, right? Like you're looking through things, you're paying attention. You have to, and I think that's fascinating, and I dig it. I dig it a lot, because again, like, you have to be on your toes while you're playing Expedition 33. Like, you have to be. So and not only is your enemy doing it, but you have a certain rhythm that you're doing, right? Like, so it is turn based, and it's not like the ATB system where hey, I'm taking too long my turn, and there's that, right? It's like you could be doing your turn, so you have some time to think, but then when you're actually attacking, you have to think about that rhythm, because with a base attack it's fine, right? But if I'm doing a skill, some of those skills require me to do certain inputs, right? Like, maybe I'm doing this one attack and it's like, hey, I have to hit 3 other times during that attack to like maximize my damage. And you have the idea of like, when you have that interaction button, you can hit it and it's fine, but you can also do perfect timing with it, and so you can get into that rhythm and get into that groove. And so there's a lot of rhythm and a lot of groove, right? Throughout this, right? Like, I like that, because in any given game you're building up a rhythm, or you're finding your rhythm, and once you're getting into that rhythm you're building up a flow, and it's just gonna like change battle to battle sometimes, and that's fine, but you have to figure it out, and it's all like math, and I like it a lot. So you have all of these things going on for the combat, right? Like, you have that idea that you have, you're dishing out damage while trying to avoid taking it, and that expands to like, hey, I'm trying to at a minimum not reach 0, and I have multiple ways that I can dish out the damage, right? But then, you also have different ways that you can defend yourself, and you can restore health, you can negate attacks, you can counter, and like all of this is math, right? Whether we're talking about the damage part, whether you're dishing out or taking it, or we're talking about the timing involved and dodging and parrying and countering and all that. Like, it's all math, like the combos, the timing, the actual attacks, and then there's like the stats and attributes that surround them, the weapons that you use, and then to add into all of that, right? You have status effects and you have elements, right? So throughout the game, you can have different elements associated with different weapons, right? And you have certain enemies that might be weak to the damage that you're dishing out, right? And that's something to be said. You can take advantage of that, but there might also be some that are resistant to the type of damage that you're dealing out. So you got to be careful with that. And then there are some enemies that can actually absorb the kind of the kind of damage that you're dishing out. So let's say like, I'm dealing with a weapon that dishes out fire, right? Like, so I'm dealing with that element, and it's like, hey, for some opponents that's going to be a weakness, and I'm going to be dealing with way more damage, right? But for some, they might be resistant to it, and I'm dealing way less. And then there's some still where they're not taking any damage at all. Like, I'm actively healing them by attacking them, right? If I'm doing the fire in that case, right? So that's the idea, right? And then there's different status effects, right? um, different like buffs and debuffs that you could get as well. And with those status effects, they're inherently mathematical too, and they change the flow of combat. Some in a more direct way, like if you're stunned or you're stunning someone, like right, you can't attack um, at that given moment, right? So you lose what you could do during that turn. If you're frozen, for instance, that lasts multiple turns. If you're charmed, for instance, like not only can you not like attack, but you just don't have any control over that particular character. They could attack your other characters. And then you have like something like burn, which is like useful, but it cuts both ways. But it dishes out more damage than just the attacks you're doing. So it's like, hey, I'm going to be doing my attack, but if an opponent is burned, then they're like taking more damage. And here's the thing about like Clair Obscur, like you're stacking burns. So like you can burn your opponent. It's like, hey, maybe they have like 3 burns on them, but like then you could keep that going, and then all of a sudden, if you're really stacking on the hurt, it could be like 45. Like I've seen it happen. I've done it, and so you could really stack that damage. But again, that cuts both ways. And then there are like characters that like you can take advantage of those status effects, right? Like, because someone might be burned, but they might be like saying, "Oh, well, I could take this burn and I can actually use it to my benefit," right? Like maybe they heal or something. So yeah, but you see where I'm going with this, right? Like it's like there's so much that you can do in combat, and with that combat, it impacts your exploration, it impacts the narrative, like in your progression through it, right? And then throughout the game. So it's like, well, what's aiding you along with that combat outside of the things that I've already mentioned? So like you can use items, and I think I did mention that, right? But you have like the heal tints, the energy tints, and the revive tints. So it's like you can get back some of your health, you can get back energy or just gain energy, and you can revive your players or your other characters. And the thing is, like, you have a certain amount of those tints that you can use, and they restore after battle. But as you progress throughout that world, and you find them or kind of win them in some cases. I think like through certain enemies, or no, maybe it's just fighting, but the whole idea is though is you can increase that amount that you're dealing with. So it's like, hey, maybe at one point I have 3 of each, right? But then I can eventually, um, you know, throughout the game get like maybe 10 of each, right? And then can like increase their potency throughout, right? Because like, hey, I'm just dealing with like small versions of them, but then medium and then large and all that stuff. So right, something to that effect. So you have those items that can impact everything that you're doing, and the weapons as well. But as you're navigating the world, you're finding and building up chroma, and that's the currency in this world. And as you're doing that, you can use that chroma to like upgrade, you know, your sorry, upgrade different things, right? You can use it to buy new weapons, buy new pictos, just like increase your quality of life throughout the game. And that's just like the chroma form of catalyst, or sorry, the chroma form, the currency form of chroma. I'm sorry about that. You can also get like different chroma catalysts throughout the game that allow you to like increase the weapon levels. And then the pictos that I mentioned earlier, they come with their different levels as well that can be upgraded over time. Either finding them and doing that throughout battle, or like being able to buy them in some cases. Same with like with weapons, like they have like the different catalysts, but sometimes they can be upgraded in battle or found, stuff like that. And then like you have the merchants, like the gestrels, and they will sell you those different things that I mentioned, but then they can sell you special items in some case if you fight and beat them. So you have like these systems in play, and you're dealing with combat, you're dealing with exploration, you're dealing with progression of the narrative, you're dealing with resource management and like the currency system, and all of it's tying together to like paint a very great experience. But that's not all, right? So as you're progressing through that world and you're dealing with that story, you have the characters, you have the writing that supports those characters, and the voice work that supports those characters, and they're all working in tandem to just like provide an amazing experience. And as you explore like that world, that canvas, and then of course the music, which I mentioned earlier, is like it's a bonkers thing. I feel like for a game like this, where even though they have like moments, it's pretty serious, right? Like I said, it's as tragic as it is beautiful, and so you kind of expect that operatic sort of score, right? You expect that operatic orchestral score, but they experiment because like yes you might get those scores and they're beautiful, they're amazing, yes you should listen to them and you should enjoy them, you should relish them, but it's like I could be going along, right, and I can hear those sort of scores, and maybe I have one of those like more like operatic orchestral numbers, and then all of a sudden the guitar starts popping off, right? Like they start strutting, it's like whoa, what? So you get stuff like that, right? But that's not all still. Um, you might have some scores where they're like pretty jazzy, like, and it's like, oh, this is a bop, right? And then, I have some tracks where it's kind of fusing a little bit of everything. So you're getting some sick guitar work and you're getting some sick saxophone work, and I like that combo. I mean, if you've been paying attention to my stuff, like periodically, I'll whip out my guitar. It's been a minute, but I'm a big fan of the guitar, whether I'm playing it or listening to it. And with the saxophone, I don't think I've really talked about it here, but that was another big mainstay in my life as far as like instruments go, because it's like for me the guitar, mostly electric and bass, though played acoustic, they're all connected, but also the sax, specifically the alto sax, clarinet, drums, and piano, these have been like mainstays, with the guitar being like I think the most consistent over time, just because I'm getting older and time is moving faster, and I've been like pretty consistent with that. um, but I still don't play that as much as I like. But my point is, I like guitar, right? I like the guitar, I like the saxophone, and we don't hear enough of that combo in general. And so, yeah, then there's some tracks where it's like they might hit you with a more like synth and techno sort of deal. And I just, it's a wild thing because like you could be going along, excuse me. You could be going along and you're expecting those like scores that I mentioned, and then all of a sudden you can get some jazzy numbers. Oh, okay. Or you can get some like sick guitar work, and it's a beautiful thing. And they take some chances and they implement everything well, and they bend some genres in some cases. So like I'm absolutely here for it, and that shapes the experience as you play, right? Because it can amp you up or bring you down. And so I'm trying to think if there's anything else major with the combat, because like it gets kind of crazy. I'll just say this, like back with the Pictos. Um, so like you can master them, and you could do that pretty easily, pretty quickly, right? Just like battle enough, and you can master them, and their Lumina effect, they're available to use throughout like sorry, as you gain Lumina points, and you can gain those Lumina points by some cases like finding them, battling, or buying them, and you can upgrade them as you progress. So it's like, hey, maybe I have like 10 Lumina points, and maybe that like limits what I can add on the side, and then like maybe over time I gain enough and I gain like 100, so I can like mix and max what I want to do, right? Um, and so that's cool. And to that end, it's like when it comes to the Lumina points, when it comes to the attributes, there's a lot of customization. There's a lot of flexibility. With the attributes, for instance, like if you have like the recoat item, which they're easy to come by, like you can redo your attributes, which impacts your overall stats and dictates your playing experience to a degree, right? Like so you can play around with it because like maybe you want like this character or that character to be a lot faster, right? So maybe you want to do that for like a battle. Like maybe you're having a battle where you're like, hey, speed would really help me here. So maybe you redo your stats accordingly and try to find a balance that works for you. And then you can just redo things and have it be more balanced if you wanted to. You have that option. And for like the Pictos, like I said, like you can master them pretty easily, master that Lumina, and play around with the effects, right? Because like for my characters, like I try to get the best stuff. So like there are some like Luminas that allow you to negate status effects. So it's like, hey, anti-burn, anti-freeze, anti-charm, and stuff like that. But they all take up different like Lumina points. So if you really want them, then you gotta really be on like gaining as much Lumina points as you can, and just like, hey, protecting your characters the best that you can. And giving them either different things or same thing depending on the situation, depending on how many Lumina points you have. Like for me, I was big on like making sure my characters were protected when I had enough points and when I had the right Luminos. right? Because you don't have them right off the bat, right? You have to find them, buy them, win them in battle, whatever the case may be. And so you have some options and you can play around with it. Like for instance, like for my characters, like and keep in mind, like I already beat the game and I'm doing new game plus, so I have a lot of pictos, a lot of luminas, and with the pictos you have 3 slots, right? So if I wanted to, I could have different ones. Well, you still get the lumina effect with them, but like if I wanted to like make sure my characters had good health, then I can choose pictos that have the health option, like the high health option, or like high speed, and I can choose up to 3 pictos, like because I have those 3 slots, and then like for my luminas, I can just like do what I want for that and not have to worry about those particular slots, if that makes sense. So it's just like, hey, if I have a particular picto equipped and it has the lumina. That I have access to for the Lumina points, I don't have to spend those points on that Lumina, if that makes sense. Like basically, like if I already have the Picto equipped, right, I don't have to deal with anything extra. If that makes sense. I don't know if that was explained the best, but so you can have some fun with it though. And if you have mastered enough, you can pick and choose what you want to do with the Pictos. Just make sure you don't have like negative effects if or like if you don't want to take that chance. So it's like the goals to me should be like unlocking as much as you can so you can have some decent options while equipping the best pictos that you have to give you the best stats advantage or advantages. And the same can be said for like weapons, just like doing what you can. And if you find something that works, like sticking with that and like powering that up to the max, right? Like whatever you want to do, there's options in how you play this. And that impacts how you explore and navigate the game. But hopefully though that gets across that there's like options. So everything is like working pretty well, I think, over the course of that game. You have like 3 acts that you're playing through. You have like see, this is tricky. So it's like you have in general 5 characters that you can take into battle by the end of it. Um, Overall, I'd argue you have 7 characters that you can play as, but like one never in battle and another only part of the way through. And since I said spoilers at the beginning, this is the part where I want to start to get into that a bit more. So in the beginning, you have Gustav, right? But like he unfortunately dies, and then you get Verso to replace him. But you still got to play as Gustav. Um, but you have like Gustav, Verso, you have Mael, Ciao, Monaco, uh, and you have Lune, right? So you have those 6 characters, but Verso replaces Gustav. In terms of like what you're doing with game, sorry, gameplay. And then you have Esqui, who you can't use in battle, but you're using as you navigate the world because you can mount Isqui and you is Isqui. You can like move faster across the land. You can eventually swim and you can later on fly. So that's why I said it's like you have 7 characters that you can play as, but only 6 in combat, and of those 6, only 5 regularly. And the way it works is like 3 within the battle and 2 in reserve. So there you have that, and there's just so many different options and things that you can explore, and different power ups that you can get. And I like that, after Act Two, which God, the end of Act Two that got me. That hit me hard. But after that, and you see more like Mael's like past revealed, like and she finds out she's Alicia and like she can paint. There's the painted like power Picto slash Lumina, right? And you can do more than the 99.99 damage. 9,999, right? You can go higher than that per hit after that moment. Like if you master that and you equip that to everybody. And so here's the thing, right? I think the Lumina system is like it's utterly fascinating, like the Picto slash Lumina system, because like if you don't take full advantage of it and you're just mastering things and you just want to certain people have certain things, you can still get pretty far. But once you start to accrue enough Lumina points and you've mastered enough, you can really get wild with it. And the game does like maintain its challenge, so you're gonna need to, I think, or at least like it's really gonna behoove you too. So that's my big thing though. It's like so I am because I don't know how because I'm gonna be wrapping things up, and I'm trying to see if I have enough time to do that. I think so, without doing another segment. Um, so before I talk about like my feelings towards everything, it's like this. So everything is math. Math is in everything, but it is everything. And again, gaming is a big uh, avenue where you can see the math because like there's a lot of math on the surface and a lot of math behind the scenes that you can just latch onto. And so even if you didn't directly like see it or realize that hey, this is math, you can see it a little bit more readily if you discuss it, right? And in the case of like Clair Obscur Expedition 33, it's just so cool because right, it's like there's math in that combat system. Like I said, it's the basic idea of dishing out damage while trying to avoid taking it, and then it's like it gets more nuance with that dance that you're doing with it because it's like hey, there's the different options that you can do with those like two things in mind, right? There's so many different ways to dish out the damage, and there's ways to avoid taking it, but if you're going to take it, there's ways to recover from it or negate it, or just in general play around with it, right? And so you get that idea. It's like, hey, I'm dishing out damage. I'm trying to avoid taking it. It's like you can do a base attack. You can do skills, and with those skills, you can do like more damaging attacks. But you could also be recovering, like health wise, or removing status effects, or recovering allies. And then you have the idea like, hey, I can parry. I can dodge later on. Um, you know, you can sorry, you can parry, you can dodge, but later on you can jump, and then you can counter the gradient attacks from your opponent. And later on, you can do gradient attacks, and you have the free game that I mentioned. And so you have all these things that you're just doing on that base level in combat from that basic premise of dishing out damage while trying to avoid taking it. You can get that level of nuance, and you have the idea of your combat skills, which impacts how you're doing all of that, right? And then your attributes, which impact all that still, and then your weapons, right? And then your pictos. And with those pictos, not only are they increasing your stats, but they're allowing you to do all sorts of things, right? Because like, hey, I can increase the AP that I'm getting per turn. I can increase health that I'm getting like in various ways. Like I can get health from parrying. I can get health by killing the opponents. I can get just like health each turn. Uh, you know, can revive one time with 100% health during battle. Can block out different status effects. It's like all that. And speaking of those status effects, it's like that's another element of the game that impacts that level of nuance, right? Because you have like the status effects, you have the elements, you have strengths and weaknesses, and all that good stuff. I mean, while you're accruing resources, so it's like, hey, you're going through battles, you're winning battles, you're gaining experience points, you're leveling up, you're boosting your stats, gaining attribute points, boosting your stats more, dealing with different weapons, mastering different pictos, building up different luminas, and hopefully appropriately using those luminas to make yourself devastating. And honestly, it could be challenging at times. So it's like there's never a point where it's like, hey, you're going to be too overpowered. And then if you're doing New Game Plus, yeah, everything jumps up. So it's like it's a good thing if you already powered up. But my whole thing is just like you had a very basic idea, but there's so much nuance to it, and how you're doing in combat and how you're building things up in combat impacts your ability to explore and navigate the game. But as you explore the game, that impacts your combat, that impacts navigating the story as well. And it is you're progressing through the story, right? That's impacting your combat in your exploration, right? Because if I'm doing well in combat, if I'm mastering those systems, then I'm going to be better able to explore the game, better able to progress the story. If I'm exploring, I'm able to find different items to boost how I'm doing in combat. Have more battles and progress through the story that way. And as I'm progressing through the story, I'm hitting different milestones. I'm getting different pick those sometimes through different like narrative events. I'm having these big stakes battles. I'm being able to have like new abilities for like Isque. I feel like I said it oddly there, but the whole thing is like because like at a point, he can't fly in the beginning or swim. So my whole point is like these things are working in tandem, and meanwhile you have the character work, you have the voice work, um, and you have like the writing, how everything is mapped up, and it's just like you have this excellent use of color, you have excellent use of light, and music, and all of that is wrapping up to give you a great experience. And I don't want my video to freeze out, so I'm not going to end it here because I'm just saying screw it and going all in. But I am going to pause it again for a second. Okay, so I'm back already. So, but my whole thing is that the combat. I always like talking about that when I'm talking about these sort of videos because I'm big into action games, big into RPGs, and combat is such a great way to make something that's already visceral come to life more. Because right, like math is everywhere and it's in everything. And with gaming, it's this wonderful combination of math and art. And the math is it's on the surface, it's behind the scenes, and you're just doing it all the time. And so I feel like when you have those conversations with people, is it's nicer to see that hey, you've been doing math the whole time, right? Um, and combat is such a great way to show that. Like it's built on math. It is math. It's just like an artistic and super cool way to show it, right? But you're going back and forth, and you're doing all these things like this dance of combat to like calculate what you're doing with that damage. I'm sorry, there was a better way to say that. So my whole thing is like right, like damage calculation is always a fascinating thing to me, and you're playing this back and forth with like health and how that comes to you, and I like that. So I think that's cool. But the combat doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? Throughout that combat, like you have that basic idea of dishing out damage while trying to avoid taking it, but you have this larger system that it's a part of, right? And then you have like when it comes to like color, for instance, right? Like light, sound and music and all that, right? It's all just math, right? Everything that I mentioned in their properties, and we don't talk about that enough. And so it's like all these are factors in the combat, but the game at large. And having a combat system, it can be a wonderful thing because if it's fun, it's engaging, and you're experiencing this math, you're doing this math, you're having fun with it, right? And then you're exploring this world. You're exploring the story. You're getting to know these characters, and it's a wonderful thing. And to add to all of it, right? Video games are an excellent opportunity to practice and build empathy. It's interactive empathy building, right? Like, and it's freaking cool, right? Because you're literally playing um, you know, and living as these characters, right? Like you're literally in their shoes, right? Like you're growing is they're growing, right? Your success is their success is your success. And you get invested in like the vehicle that you're experiencing and building this empathy. It's ultimately math, right? And you can see it, you can feel it, and not only that, right? But you're putting in time and energy and effort, and realistically you put in money, and that's all math too. And so you have all these things, right? Like you have the combat, you have the story, you have the world that you're exploring and how you're traversing it, and all of it's math. And it had to be programmed. People had to like do the voice work. People had to design the characters. People had to budget everything out, and people had to compose the music and play the music and layer everything so that it doesn't sound insane, right? And so all of this is coming together to form such a beautiful experience. And with Clair Obscur Expedition 33, it is literally one of the best games that I've ever played. And here's the thing, right? Like I played it after having a back-to-back run of Near Replicant and Near Automata. And for the record, Near Automata is my favorite game of all time, and I am always left with the idea of like what to do next when I've done like a million playthroughs of that. It's like, well, how do you come down off of a game like that? And my experience in the past is like, well, you find a really good game where it's like, even if it's not that, you're gonna have an incredible time. And normally, if I'm playing it safe, then maybe I play something like Devil May Cry, any of them really. But like I remember one time in particular was like Devil May Cry 5, right? And I bring that up because it's like, hey, that helped me feel okay with things ending before moving to like another game. And then, so that's just to give you an idea of things because like, so Near Replicant is an excellent game. Near Automata is somehow even better. It works is its own thing, but it works as a sequel as well in some really crazy ways. It's like because Nier Automata is a sequel to Nier Replicant, which is a spin-off of an alternate ending of Drakengard, and so like playing things back to back, and experiencing like so much awesomeness, and then coming to Clair Obscur Expedition 33 and to be like, oh, okay, yeah, one of the best games I ever played. That's impressive to me. Because again, Nier Automata is my favorite game of all time. It's an impressive game, and so if I can come off of that and play something that fills me with so much joy, then that is excellent to me. And again, the whole game, it hits you and it hits you hard, but like the end of Act Two, I like it. And again, I said spoilers at the beginning of this, but like pretty much everyone dies, right? But like in a way where they can't really come back because like Mayel resurrects the characters that you play as, but like she's doing that from memory, right? So it's like it's not quite the same. And then whatever ending you end up getting is tragic either way. It's like that part's a bummer, but like the ride is incredible, and still, no matter how you end things, whether you choose Mael or Verso, like you still get something where it says something about humanity. It says something about joy. It says something about grief, and I just find the whole game just fascinating because it's like you got the idea of like the canvas and it's a created world, and it's like, but does that make it fake? Not really. I mean, everyone in it were they were people. They lived lives. They wanted to live. Like the whole thing with that kicks this off, and this is like it's all map two, and and I like that. But the whole thing that kicks it off is like each year they saw the number on the monolith, and it was like it's going down. I'm sorry, there's a better way to explain this. The idea is like this, right? The paintress, or and it's a little bit more complicated later on, but the idea is like the people of that world of Lumiere, of the canvas world, it's like they're under the impression, because they see the paintress painting the numbers each year, they're under the impression that each year, right, she does the gommage and like she kills people that reach a certain age. So it's just like if it says something like 44 on it, then like everyone who just reached 44, like they're done, they're gone, they're dead. Um, and so and it's like a ticking clock, right? Ticking clock, because for here the time was working backwards, right? So it's like, hey, if it's like 67 one year, then it has to be 66, and then 65, and like so on and so forth. And then we get to 33 by the time we're entered into the story, right? So you have the idea like, hey, everyone who just hit 33, or sorry, 34 died, and like those who are going to hit 33 that upcoming year will die, if that makes sense. So that's the idea, and all these characters are alive, and they want to live, they want a future, like that's real to me, and that idea of like what's real and what's fake is a fascinating one, because things that seem like real can maybe not be as real as you want them to be, and things that can be fake or considered fake have more to do with reality than you may think. But so there's the idea of what's real, what's fake, the idea of humanity and identity, of lost, you know, and the idea of family, and both found family and the one that you're born into, and what does that all mean? And so you have like these themes, and like they can get pretty heavy, and they can hit so hard. And I dig it though, because it's just like I could be playing, I could be having like a good time in combat, doing my thing, and then hit with something tragic, and it's all like dealt with pretty well. And so if I start to bring this video to a close, because I've been going at it, and I've said I think largely what I needed to say. Like now we're at the point where I want to sum up my experience with the game and bring it to a close. So with Clair Obscur Expedition 33, it starts off with a bang, right? And it just never lets up. Like the story, they have light moments, but it is deeply tragic, and it says so much. And for the gameplay, even when you are taking advantage of the system, the best that you can, there's still going to be some challenging enemies. So it's like you can get to a point where you're maxed out level wise, and you have a crap ton of luminas, and like your stats are insane, And even at their most balanced, and even with everything, you're still going to find some enemies that are going to be challenging. And this is even before New Game Plus. Now, you'll do well against like the bosses if you're like maxed out and everything like that, but like there are still some like enemies wandering around where they're gonna be tough. And so it's just like they play it so well, and I appreciate like what they did, with the music, because I really dig it. And for the record, um, like Sandfall, like Interactive, they actually posted the music. Like I posted it on my YouTube channel, and I'll leave a description in the link. So wherever you're watching this, you should be able to see it. But so on their YouTube channel, they posted and like a video that's like over 8 hours that has all the tracks like through Act One, Two, and Three, um, all of it. They have that for free, but that's not all. They have a playlist option for that too. So they have like 174 tracks, right? Like, so if you didn't want to do that whole singular video, you could do the playlist. Both are free. Both are on YouTube. I'll leave a link in the description. Um, the music was stellar. Yeah, and so like everything was just so well delivered, and it's just like they came swinging out the gate. Like I think like most of the people, not everybody, but like I think a good amount of the development team came from like Ubisoft, like before branching out on their own, and that says something because like regardless of what you may think of like Ubisoft and their like business practices, they have a lot of talented people and have for decades. So it's like I in general support people striking out on their own, and so you have some people from Ubisoft again, like from what I've been seeing, and some other people as well getting together to produce this game and having like this just like an insane like cast for it, right? Because like everyone is just on point with the voice work. It's a beautiful thing, and the game itself is just very beautiful, very dreamlike, very surreal, and that cannot be accidental given what we learned throughout the course of the game. And it's just like it's a fascinating thing, and I'm just thoroughly wild because again, like this is a new IP just coming straight out the gate, and even though yes, there have been experienced people coming from it, it's like a game is a huge undertaking, and so you have people who like they secured the funding, they secured the talent, they took some risk, and it was like calculated risk though, and so I'm left with a game that just wowed me at every turn that I'm still playing at this point. Like because again, like sorry, I'm playing through the new game plus, nearing the end of Act Two, and yeah, then I'll have Act Three, and I'll be able to like explore better again. But yeah, so their new game plus is interesting because it's like you know, like with Esqui, he doesn't have all his abilities. Once you have him again, you have to get those again, like through the narrative and all that. But like you have all your characters, whether they've been introduced in the story or not, and you have all your Pictos and Luminas. So you have all that, and it's just like, but if you have anything that was like left over from like a quest that you didn't complete, you gotta pretty much start that over. So it's like they take some things away, but they let you keep a lot, and a lot of options like sort of open up if you're doing some things early on with that, and it gives you a chance to explore more if you didn't get everything that you wanted to out that first time. Um, and that, for me, I'm largely playing it for the gameplay for the new game plus because like I spent a lot of time immersed in the story, so, and it's still very very fresh. So it's like but I've been paying attention to certain things within that I was like I wanted to remember better. Um, so that's where I'm at because it's like normally I don't even play a new game plus because most of the time it's like I'm better off just like exploring the world after you beat the big bad. But like with a lot of new game pluses, like it doesn't do anything for me. Like I'm glad it exists, but like for here, it's like I wasn't quite done with it yet, right? Like I wanted to play on, and so here I am. But yeah, so it's like new game plus is interesting because like it's gonna hit differently for different people. But yeah, so I want to see if there's anything else that I want to say. So I feel like if you've watched this to this point, like there's a good chance you probably played Clair Obscur, but you wanted to talk about it more. You wanted to hear more about the map. You wanted to hear more about like what I wanted to say, or you just been like following my work and you dig it. Um, so if you did play it, like how was the experience for you? And if you haven't played it and you have the means to do it, you should get that game. And if not now, later. Because it is like a surreal game in the best possible way. So yeah, as I bring this video to the close, like I talked about this longer than I thought I was going to talk about it, but it's pretty on brand for me, and it makes a lot of sense because I have a lot of things to say. And the crazy thing is, there's always more that you can say about this sort of stuff. So if you want to add to the discussion, please feel free to do so. And I'll see you in the future. Professor Prime out.